Okay, speaking of, let's go through some lists from before the ban list and talk about whether those decks still have any viability. And as much as I would like to say, let's skip over Malice, the deck is dead without even thinking about it. Well, let's give it some thought, okay? So this is a relatively standard top 4 from the Berlin regional Malice list from before this ban list update. And of course, in the main deck, there are no changes to this deck whatsoever. In the extra deck, they lose the white binder. Now, I want to discuss this. I want to discuss whether Malice is dead or not. And we're going to do this for most meta decks today. And give them some serious thought on whether there's a chance or not for them to still see play. Because here's the thing with Malice. Technically, I'm pretty sure the deck is still viable without Whitebind. Or viable is the wrong word. Technically, I think you can still do some pretty nasty combos. Like, I'm pretty sure that even without Whitebinder, like a one card Dormouse or like a Chessie plus Malice name or whatever, or like a Malice name plus a Bestial can still do some pretty crazy things, because of course we still have Red Ransom. And honestly, there's also a world where you just turn this deck more like Cyber's sloppy, right? Where instead, like, you could still use Malice as like an engine in a Cyber's deck, right? Where you still have a lot of the most powerful endboard pieces, right? You still have the Wicked to bridge into backup to get the Wizard, and then you eventually make Firewall, you make Allied Code Talker Ad Ignister, and if you throw in a Malice Heart Scripter with a March Hare in the hand, like, yeah, you got a lot of stuff still, right? You've got a lot of stuff still to make the deck work. I think from let's just call this pure Malice. I know it's like a Malice Ad Ignister Bestial pile, but like from a pure Malice perspective, the way I look at it, I feel like the problem is not that you don't have an end board or you don't have combos to get there. I think the problem is, how is that going to work in actual games? Because on paper, you can probably sit down and craft like some pretty good Malice lines if you're going uninterrupted without Whitebinder. I think the problem happens when you get interacted with, right? When your opponent like interacts and uses like removal or any sort, or when you're going second and you're playing into a board. Usually, the way that Malice works, right, is you start producing bodies on the board, and then you convert those bodies eventually into your first Link 3, which is Red Ransom or Whitebinder at the moment, right? Usually it's Red Ransom first, right? And then it's Red Ransom first. Red Ransom produces more bodies by getting you the field spell, and then you keep linking, and then you use the field spell or March Hare to banish the Red Ransom, and then Red Ransom gives you another 2 bodies because it comes back from the banished pile and so on. But eventually it's always a lot of bodies through the Red Ransom. But what happens if your Red Ransom gets interrupted, like let's say it gets negated or they remove it from the board, you somehow have to replace those link climbing capabilities. Like let's say you summon Red Ransom, you search Malice in Underground, and your opponent summons an Arthalion with Phimena or Mululu or Cartesia or whatever, whether you're going first or second into a board, right? And then your Red Ransom goes back into the extra deck. And then you kind of have to replace the Red Ransom or the Red Ransom's ability to link climb with another link. And you don't have that other link, right? You don't have the second push. The second push is kind of missing after your first push gets dealt with, right? Like, and that's usually what it was, right? You start summoning bodies, you make one Link 3. If that Link 3 gets interrupted with, you always have a separate line to go down with the other Link 3. You know, whether it's Ransom first and then Binder, or Binder first and then Ransom. In Master Duel, this was not a problem because they had Link Decoder and Splash Mage to replace the link climbing capability of the other Link 3, right? They lost Ransom, but that was okay, because if you got interrupted on Whitebinder, you could still get to a lot of link material by counting Link Decoder and Splash Mage in, right? You had other ways to basically cheat the system and cheat your way up with few bodies all the way up into like Link 5s and stuff, right? I don't really see that happening with without Whitebinder. And that's not even to say like Whitebinder is also, in my opinion, the most powerful endboard piece in Maliss. I think Whitebinder is the most powerful thing that Maliss ends on in rotation for the grind game, right? Because genuinely, without Whitebinder, maybe you can make a board of Allied Code Talker with Heart Scripter and 07 access, right? Like maybe you can do that still. But that board might be outgrindable now. Genuinely, it could be, because you no longer have this like completely stupid amount of follow-up where all of your Maliss cards are in the graveyard. So all you have to do is you go like March Hare, banish Binder, draw a card from Binder, and then banish like 3 Maliss cards from your grave, and they all come back, right? You just don't have that anymore. So I think the deck gets weaker to interruption now. The deck has weaker combo lines in general, even uninterrupted, even though the uninterrupted combos are probably still strong. The deck has way less interruption, and also no way, and that's really important, no way to mess up the opponent's graveyard. Like, literally no more ways to interact with the opponent's graveyard, which is super important. Like, you have Bystials still if you draw those, but those are not part of the Maliss engine. But you can't just, like, banish everything out of your opponent's graveyard. Firewall. Okay, you have Firewall. You have Firewall, but that's much weaker. Like, banishing from grave is not the same as bouncing a monster. Also, like Whitebinder also being able to banish all the spell traps in some matchups was just, like, disgusting, right? Depending on which deck you're playing. So, less of that. You draw less cards in the combo, which is very, very impactful. Of course, you can still draw 2 with Chessy Cat a lot of the time, but you lose a draw from Whitebinder in your turn, and you lose a draw from Whitebinder in the opponent's turn, which in a deck with non-engine like Impulse, Bystials, Nibiru, Ashes, like with a deck with such powerful non-engine, getting less draws is impactful. It is really impactful that you don't get to draw 2 free cards on top of what you're already doing. So yeah. Personally, is Maliss completely dead? Completely dead, no. I think if someone really wants to play Maliss for whatever reason, the reasons are beyond me, but whatever. I think they still could, but I do think that that Whitebinder ban is enough to make the deck acceptable. And when I say acceptable, I don't mean fun to play against. It's probably still not going to be fun to play against for me, but like I think without Whitebinder, even if the deck still sees some play, I think it's going to be manageable. And I hope that's true. I hope I'm not wrong on this. I hope I don't get proven wrong and the deck is still somehow problematic. But I think it's okay. I think it is okay. It still has some things going for it. Like it still has great non-engine because it has synergy with Dominus Impulse. It still has great lines into Molcharmi Fualos. And there is still a ton of tools that it could use that it's currently not using, right? It's got, you can play Allure of Darkness. You can play Dimensional Fissure, which is a phenomenal card against Dracotail. You can play any other slop Cyberse engine in the game to give you more pushes, right? You can play MathMex, you can play more Adignisters, you have Cynet mining available. Like there's so many tools for decks like this. Like the Radiant Typhoon package is also great. People are citing it right now because Droll is in a lot of main decks. If Droll is out of the main decks in the next format, then you could even main deck these for more pushes going second or whatever with an MST, I guess. But there's a lot of options in this deck. So I personally don't think it's completely dead, but from a competitive perspective, genuinely, I don't really see a reason to play it. Well, I mean, that's not true. I just listed a couple of reasons, but I think it's just not going to be resilient enough in actual games of Yu-Gi-Oh! I think on paper, it still looks like a working concept, somewhat, but I think without Whitebinder, you're missing the most broken card in the deck. And I think it's not good enough to justify playing it without Whitebinder, is how I feel about it. the cons outweigh the pros. Let's say it like that. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's what I'm basically trying to be. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, it just loses a lot of things without Whitebinder. What is the grind gain now? Does it have any follow-up? So I guess it's a lot harder, right? Because like, how do you get March Hare back to your hand after you use it on turn 1? Like, I guess the loop is you want to end with March Hare in hand, and then on the opponent's turn, you want to go March Hare, banish White Rabbit, set MTP07, activate MTP07 to get a banish. You banish the March Hare to activate the MTP, and then you search a Malice card, and then the March Hare goes back to your hand because you banish it for MTP, right? That's kind of like what the loop is, right? And then you, for follow-up, you have March Hare and probably a Chessy Cat in hand, right? Which is then okay because you can then use March Hare to banish Cryptor from the grave after it gets outed, and then Cryptor comes back. It's still, there is still something, right? It's not nothing, but you can really see how, especially if you think about like turn 2 and onwards, you can see how the Whitebinder, like it just doesn't add up anymore, right? It's not like as simple as, oh, on my opponent's turn, March Hare, banish Whitebinder, draw a card, Whitebinder, banish White Rabbit, the Chessy Cat, and Cryptor or Ransom from my grave, banish all of them, they all trigger, then I get the MTP search, then March Hare comes back to my hand, and then on my next turn, even if they out the entire board, I can still go March Hare on Whitebinder, draw another card, and do it all again, right? So that loop is so much less broken now. It's still good. It's still a good loop. It's just like, it sounds normal. It sounds like a normal thing for follow-up that decks do. So you lose that like completely broken aspect of it, which is good. But yes, maybe a fair and normal version of Malice is still good enough to compete. So that's how I feel about Malice. And I say this, of course, as someone who's never played much Malice. I haven't played much Malice myself, but I played against Malice a lot. You know, I've studied my enemy. I've studied my enemy pretty thoroughly, I would say, and I do think this is likely enough to make the deck balanced, and I hope I'm not wrong on that.